may begin.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores. I do want to start by apologizing to the members of the public who've been waiting for the meeting to start. Council had a special meeting just ahead of this, which ran a little bit late, so sorry for the late start, and we appreciate your indulgence. The second item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you wish to declare. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda. We do have one open forum request this evening, and it is from Mr. Dan Frank. And it doesn't actually tell me which agenda item he's here to speak to us on. So hopefully Mr. Frank will let us know that when he joins the meeting. Are you there, Mr. Frank?
Hold on.
Good.
There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. You got 3 minutes, Mr. Frank. The floor is yours.
Okay, good. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors, and thank you once again for allowing me to speak concerning the Waterfront Revitalization Plan. It's a lovely balmy evening here down by the beach, and I will continue here. The world has changed a lot since July 2019, and so has the design plan of the CCV, the location, size, height, and the facilities within it. So far, 3 of the key staff overseeing the development have moved on to new positions. I have some questions. Why, since its inception, has a stakeholder group never been formed to provide the necessary, meaningful public input to the proponent and to the town council? We ask once again that one be formed to guide the process before you approve the site plan agreement. The character of our beach depends on what council accepts. Why has a project manager never been hired by the proponent to spearhead and guide this development? Who is providing the expertise in coastal development that is essential to see the proposal through to completion? No financial feasibility study has been shared with the public. What justification is there to prove that this development is even economically viable? Although not required by the SVCA, why hasn't an environmental impact study been completed, addressing issues like the fill, lake levels, and climate change, as required by the provincial policy statement of 2020? Why hasn't council used the survey data available to them? Both the town and beach preserver surveys have shown that the public wants a 1-story development on the original site, not 2 as is currently proposed. We, the Port Elgin Beach Preservers, request that given recent unforeseen circumstances, council 1, defer any final decision regarding the site plan. 2, implement environmental, traffic, and feasibility studies. 3, hold meaningful public discussions with stakeholders, staff, and proponents. And 4, could you consider a smaller 1-story alternative design as a starting point for discussion? Thank you once again for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Okay, that is our one and only open forum delegation this evening. So that moves on. We have no delegations this evening. We have no public meeting. So we're on to reports of municipal officers and committees. And that moves us to 7.2, which is a general government staff report on the Cedar Crescent Village waterfront development. And we'll turn it over to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have Jay Posner, our Supervisor of Planning and Development, here with me tonight, who will go through the report for council, and then I'm happy to help field any questions in support of Jay tonight.
Okay, on that note, I guess I'll lead us through the report, help you understand and clarify as needed. You've had a few days to read this, so I don't want to go into a lot of detail through this presentation. Up front, though, I want to highlight that the proponent owner has been presented the agreements that are included in the report, but he has yet to provide his formal, I say, acquiescence or agreement to those terms. So I just want to put that up front that staff are presenting these as recommendations, as staff recommendations, not necessarily the final version, which, so at this time, we're looking for your questions, comments, clarifications, ways we can improve the documentation that's before us tonight. So I'll lead through that. So following on from the November 22nd approval of the revised location, the proponent prepared and submitted more detailed information in support of the project. Included a design brief, site plan drawings, engineering plans, renderings, a hydrogeologic report, and geotechnical report. Per Saugeen Valley recommendations, they recommended that an EIS could be waived, provided that sediment and erosion control was proposed to protect fish habitat. And in this regard, the proponent, as part of their engineering submission, had submitted a sediment and erosion control plan. And throughout this report and on the adjoining lands, the town will be advancing work to formalize and address parking matters in the beachfront area. First element of the report is related to how the proposal complies with the zoning bylaw. The lands where the buildings are proposed are actually in the OS1 zone, and that area permits a range of open space uses as outlined in the bylaw, as well as a restaurant, recreation facilities, boat, bicycle rentals, boat clubhouse, and accessory retail facilities existing on the date of the passing of the bylaw. And in my interpretation and research of that is that the OS zone provisions are to be taken as a whole and applied to the project would form part of a cohesive publicly accessible waterfront recreation area. Throughout many iterations of the zoning bylaw, the same list and arrangement of permitted uses has existed, in fact, since about the 1980s. At that time, there were same and similar uses throughout the zoned area. And that zoned area, by the way, includes lands further to the south, extends north toward, wrapping around, including North Shore Park. So you really have to look at the area as a whole to sort of understand what the town was looking at when they zoned it for these special uses. The preparation of the waterfront master plan in the last decade laid that foundation to continue using these permitted uses and maybe perhaps reorganize them. And so the RFP was presented to the town. On parking, apart from bike parking, and perhaps the most difficult site servicing component is how vehicular parking can be accommodated. Per the lease, the town's responsible for providing the necessary parking, and the works that are on the adjoining lands, the detailed work will be undertaken in later this year and next year, as outlined in the recommendation as well. Setbacks and height. Setbacks are per the open space zone. From all property lines, they're required to be 15 meters. The obvious ones are from the north and east property lines that abutting the Elgin Street and the Harbor Street frontages. They are compliant. The further the western and southern lines, they're greater than 15 meters, and the property lines are quite a bit further from 15 meters. Building height, bylaw permits a maximum of 10 meters. I want to highlight two sections, the Widow's Watch and the HVAC screening in the report. Those exceed 10 meters, but those elements, those architectural and mechanical elements, are permitted exceptions in the zoning bylaw because they're not habitable features, and then they're, from our review, no higher than required in their function. Landscape open space is 10%. Leased area is not, again, the established property boundaries. And the town's work that we're going to be advancing will improve landscaping, enhance it to make the location to make it a premier destination. And lot coverage, 25% The leased area is not the property boundaries. The property of the land is about 6 hectares. Even when combined with all the other buildings at the waterfront, the buildings don't approach that 25% maximum. The lease outlined the town's responsibilities in approving the site works and servicing agreement, and that is one of the rights, approval rights under the lease. Those 6 components are outlined. Our analysis and review of the submissions are that the proponent has satisfied them. If you'd like, I can go into more detail, but I think what's important are some of the other elements right now. Accessibility Advisory Committee provided comments, the proponents provided a response, and these matters will be addressed. It's one of the identified matters later on where we want to refine those accessibility components so that they're better integrated with both, not just the buildings, but also the works on the adjoining lands. And so that's why we recommend that they can be separated from this particular request tonight. And as just mentioned with accessibility, there are a series of unresolved matters, which when resolved and approved can be integrated in the agreement and may result in minor revisions to what you see tonight. That includes pavilion design, the accessibility comments aforementioned, signage design, lighting design, and in particular, as on the renderings and building elevations, the facade of the north wall. Components of the agreement to highlight are the requirement to have a building permit within 3 months. We'd like to get the project underway and completed in a timely manner. And so in that regard, the completion should be just over a year from now, in August of next year, no later than. There's an recommended acknowledgement the town will design the parking and landscaping components for the waterfront area, and that those areas are on the, so the developer knows and the town knows that those are on the approved site servicing plans. We recommend delegation of minor revisions to the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services, including matters related to the pavilion, accessibility, signage, and lighting, and then delegation of final engineering related matters to the Director. And likewise, that there may be revisions. Engineering matters may also be revised as grade may be slightly affected. Regarding that north facade wall, it is not an ideal design from our perspective, which is why we recommend that the proponent allow a mural, an interactive wall or green wall on the north facade as determined by the town. We recommend a provision of $150,000 imposition to be paid by the proponent in support of the town-led work related to parking, landscaping, and pedestrian connectivity, active transportation. It's outlined in this report and in the agreement. And that to finally resolve this, the delineated area, require a reference plan prepared by a land surveyor to delineate the leased lands. Finally, recommend changes to the land lease to reflect that there has been changes to the original proposal. And so there's 3 schedules to be amended. The first is additional terms, which outlined a number of clauses related to the operation of a banquet hall, restaurant, train. And so since the banquet hall is no longer proposed, the train element, we've removed that rather, and the train element has been broadened to allow connectivity with North Shore Park and other future train uses. There in the value added services schedule, we've revised to remove references to volleyball, tourism office, and the banquet hall, since those are not foreseeable in this project. And a new term is added, allowing use of the market space, which is an area of the building that's identified on the site plan. And Schedule D, which is the building footprint, rather than the sort of, I was going to call it nebulous, but it's sort of undefined footprint outlined in November. Let's tie it directly to the site works and servicing agreement, so it's consistent across agreements. Those are that's the report. And if there are any questions, or if you'd like to be directed to any drawings, I can happily assist, or Kara can as well.
Sure, thank you, Jay. Then I'll read the recommendation and we can take any questions or comments from the committee. It's recommended that council enter into the site works and servicing agreement, and that council delegate approval of the matters outlined in the site works and servicing agreement to the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services, subject to the following. Any approvals exercised under the delegated authority shall be in general conformity with the site plan and be compliant with the zoning bylaw, or be minor in nature, be compliant with the zoning bylaw, and be limited to matters related to the pavilion, engineering, signage, lighting, and accessibility. In exercising such authority, the director shall consult with appropriate committees and persons competent in regards to the specific matters, and that council instructs staff to prepare a schedule and cost estimate for the consultation related to parking and landscaping matters in the waterfront area, and that following council approval, the consultation schedule and cost estimate shall design the parking and landscaping in accordance with the consultation schedule and shall bring the design back to council for consideration, and that council approve the amending lease agreement. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Councilor Grace and then Councilor Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of questions. First, my first question is, I guess this would be to Jay, most of these. So the wording of the OS1 zone description includes a restaurant, because I didn't know the answer to this, and I suspect some other people may not either. Does the reading of this mean that only one restaurant will be permitted? And if so, how is that restaurant defined? Because the architectural brief refers to potential tenancies such as a pizzeria or a coffee shop.
Yes, thank you. It's a very good question to have. It's something that comes up not specifically related to this, but in a number of situations in our bylaw. We list a range of permitted uses, and I'll reference the CC zone or our commercial core zone. We use the same language in that zone to list the permitted uses. They're written in the singular form: restaurant, personal service shop, retail store. They're not intended to be taken as singular in the sense that you can only have one of those in the commercial core zone, because that wouldn't be what is intended by the bylaw. You clearly can have more than one restaurant in the downtown core. Likewise, you can provide singular or plural uses in the open space zone.
Okay, I have several questions, Mr. Mayor. The next one is about the southernmost extension, which has the commercial properties on the bottom. I wonder if you would clarify what is on the second story, what is in the second story, and where the dining terrace is located. Is the dining terrace on top of the roof of the second story? And as well as that, there was a description about awnings being used in the dining terrace, and I wondered about the height of those.
Yeah, okay. The second floor that's on that southern extension includes kitchen space. I'm just reading from the more detailed plans in front of me. Areas for the indoor dining, the outdoor restaurant dining, areas for washroom, stairwells, and elevator. And the dining space, I think it shows up best on one of the renderings. And in your package, it might be in page 5. I'm trying to remember how I was attached to the report. I think it's rendering 5. Let me just check the, oops, that's not it. The second picture on page 5 of that first attachment, it's labeled site plan, building elevations renderings, I think it is. That shows it's sort of a good angle of that southern area. And you can see in that area, the terrace dining with the awnings above the terrace. It looks almost like a canvas covering for that partial part of the second floor.
So I guess just to clarify again that the outdoor dining area is not on, you don't have a second story and then the dining area on top of the roof of the second story.
Correct. It's on the top of the first story. I should have been direct with that.
Okay, thank you. I received a question from a resident who is sure or contends that the zoning bylaw requires a replacement building that must be built within the existing building footprint. And I wondered if you could clarify that for the OS1 zone, if there is such a requirement.
Yeah, that's a normal requirement for non-conforming or for lands within an EP zone. These are outside of that. In fact, the open space zone lists the list of permitted uses, and you can build them in accordance with the provisions. That means you could build them anywhere on the property, provided they met the setbacks.
Okay. This is just a clerical thing, but I wanted for the public to know that you confirmed that there would be a correction on number 5 of the draft site works and servicing agreement, where there's a discrepancy between the written figure of $4,698 and the numerical representations of $2,698.
You're muted there, Jay.
Correct. There is an error there. I wrote 4,000, and in each of the two other areas I noted it's 2,000 and a few $100s. That's the cost to prepare this agreement, the service that is being provided. So to be consistent, it should be 2,000 plus consistently.
Okay, thank you. And under Schedule B of the lease amendments, I wondered about, since the banquet hall is not going to appear in this proposed project, your assurance that the references to the banquet hall will be removed from the non-competition clause number 3?
Yeah, so where banquet hall is listed in the schedule, it should also be removed from the remainder of the schedule. And so when it's brought back to council, depending on your recommendation this evening, it'll be deleted.
Okay, I have 2 comments or questions, actually. One question, one comment about the accessibility committee's comments and the proponent's response. At one point in the proponent's response, there's a statement that the developer will not necessarily provide a barrier-free access to parts of the project used for service, storage, deliveries, maintenance, or cooking of food in commercial kitchen spaces. I'm wondering about whether it will still be possible to employ someone who requires accessible accommodations.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on accessibility matters. Certainly, I think they can certainly hire somebody. They'd have to accommodate them, to my limited knowledge of the AODA and its requirements. Nevertheless, accessibility is yet to be resolved finally. So we, based on this question and this comment, we could explore that further with the proponent to see what can be addressed.
Okay, and my last, I do have a longer comment. I don't know if you want me to wait on that, Mr. Mayor, but my last one is also, it's a comment that's just related to number 18 of the proponent's response to the Accessibility Committee. Something that I know, I've been on the Accessibility Committee since 2015. And one of the goals that the committee has is to try to provide beach wheelchairs for patrons at the beach. And one of the proposals, I think initially when this lease was being discussed, was that that might be something that could be provided by the proponent as a service to the public. In that list of proposed services that the proponent might provide in lieu of rent or some degree of rent. And I noted in the response, the proponent's response, that they needed some more information on that. And I think the challenge for the municipality in this is to provide some place where those types of wheelchairs could be securely stored, and even where somebody could have access, because probably you'd have to put down like a credit card or something like that to take it out for several hours. So that's just something I'd also like. I would welcome staff continuing to talk to the proponent to see if that's something that could be explored.
I guess I would just add my voice in support of what Councillor Grace is saying on that last point. It would be great if between now, if council approves this tonight and the next time we see it, if staff could engage with the proponent on that particular item. That's of great consequence, I think, to the accessibility committee and I think importance to the municipality as a whole. And if they would agree to provide that service, I think that would be a great thing and something we should pursue.
So, Mr. Mayor, I do have a longer comment, but I don't know if you want me to wait on that until other questions are answered.
Why don't we go around? We'll get whatever questions are answered, and then folks can make whatever comments they have after that. We'll get the questions out of the way to start. How about I saw the deputy? Well, actually, sorry, I had Councillor Mayette first, and then I'll get to the deputy mayor. Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Jay, for the detailed explanation. My question is with regards to number 5, the site draft works and servicing agreement, and in going through that agreement, it occurred to me that there were a number of items that seemed to duplicate or perhaps even add on to the responsibilities of the proponent that were either already in or are in addition to those that are in the lease agreement. In your opinion, are there additional burdens or additional requirements being put on through that site servicing agreement that that weren't contemplated in the lease? And then I have a follow-up question too.
Yeah, certainly. I don't know if I'd characterize it as additional burdens. I guess the way the lease works is that there's an overarching framework for how the proponent is to go through and to come up with their project. And the lease outlines the terms for how they should go about that. One of them is preparing drawings and project plans that can form part of a site works and servicing. The implication being that those are more detailed and there'll be more detailed outlinings of their responsibilities, both ours and theirs, in that site works and servicing agreement. So I wouldn't call them duplications, though I welcome any comments you have on what may be contradictions. Certainly there's an additional imposition as outlined in the site works and servicing because of the way the project has proceeded since its initial proposal from 2019, I guess it was, to now, and we've asked for a contribution for their for them to be able to pay for some of the work we'll be doing for landscaping, pedestrian connectivity, active transportation, all on the adjoining lands.
All right. Well, if you, for as an example, then the one area that I noted in the servicing agreement was the requirement for a $150,000 deposit. Is that in addition to the $150,000 deposit that was in the lease?
Well, yeah, to me, they're securing different things. One is and certainly, as I said, the proponent hasn't agreed to all the terms. This may be one where they object, given that we're already holding $150,000. I don't characterize them as duplications. They're for different purposes. One is to comply with the terms of the lease, which, yes, is inclusive of the site works, but also many other elements. The site works is, securing and requesting a security to ensure they complete the works as they've submitted, and we've approved them. So it's the lease outlining the requirements for elements of the lease. It's the site works element outlining the requirements for the detailed works that are being constructed. And there's definitely a limit and time limits on how they can be released and adjusted depending on the works of those documents. I got to defer to our lawyer a little bit on this because on her advice, we were developing these requirements.
Okay, so this is a work in progress, but this is the first pass, if you will, for the municipality as to put this agreement out, and then it's subject to negotiation, if you will, with the proponent.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is an unusual project. This is property we own. We have entered into a lease with a proponent to build the works. So the way those things develop are different than, say, a standard project. Like, I think this is an appropriate response given not only the proponents and the relationship in the lease, but also the community's response. We're leading with the site works draft now and seeking council direction, and then working with the proponent, returning to council with whatever's been resolved.
Sorry, Councillor, I just wanted to get real clarity on the councillor's question because it was because what I read here and what was just said is a little different. That what it says in your report is the provision of $150,000 imposition to be paid by the proponent in support of the town-led work related to parking and landscaping. That's not a deposit. That's a payment, an imposition that will not be rebated at any point. I just want to be real clear about that because it wasn't entirely clear. Is that correct, Jay?
Well, there's two elements. One is security, which, as council's familiar, is an amount of money we hold for a defined period of time while works are being constructed. One is a imposition, a contribution. They both happen to be the same amount of money, and maybe I should have picked a different amount to differentiate them. But the second $150,000 request is for a contribution to the town-led work that's outlined in the report.
But just to be certainly clear, I apologize, Councilor Mayette, for interjecting, but I just want us to be very clear about this. The $150,000 deposit was in the lease agreement, and we're not considering that tonight. That's done and taken care of. The $150,000 imposition is what's before us this evening, and that is not a deposit. That's an imposition. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's a question for me. I guess if I've muddied the waters with the word and term imposition, I apologize. The idea is that one's being held for a period of time and will be returned to the proponent. One will come to the town and it will be spent by the town.
Okay. Sorry, Councilor Mayette.
Okay, so just one last comment as a follow-up to that. And thanks, Jay, you alluded to it when you said that this is a different type of arrangement than would it be for a builder on his own land and the requirements that would be imposed upon them for site services and things like that. This one's slightly different because it is a partnership between the town who owns the land and the proponent who's entering into a lease agreement. But the overall spirit of this, from my recollection back 2 years ago, was that there are elements of this development that are being built by the proponent, but are directly for the public's use. They're not all for the proponent's operation of a profit developing restaurant or stores or leasing out of facilities, but there's public washrooms which are going to be connected to the public services. And it seems to me that that the spirit of the agreement back then was that there are certain joint venture aspects to the bearing of costs associated with these things, whereas this seems to put all of the burden on the developer, even though going forward, some of those aspects of the development will be for the benefit of the general public, because it's going to be open space available to anybody anytime, with the exception of possibly the restaurant or the maybe some of the stores and things like that. Am I off base on that? There's a burden sharing component to this?
Well, it certainly has changed over the last 2 years. The amount of space, and I don't even think in the previous design it was a sort of an unlimited access. There was certainly controlled throughout the day at various hours. Some of those elements have been scaled back. It's why the lease agreement's being presented with revisions. There's no more volleyball courts that would be in the center court, for example. They're not there. The town may provide them later on, but they're not going to be part of this package, let's say. The proponent is making space available through the lease for public purposes and community purposes as outlined. So the use of the market space for at least 50 days of the year for whatever those community groups might be and for their purpose. Potential space for I've already forgotten, but the
Washrooms.
Got washrooms, if that's listed there. I'm trying to think. There was Wi-Fi, kids programs. I've now finally opened it up. Wednesday, free public skating, even that because the proponent has talked about that. That's still a possibility. On-site additional public washrooms. Again, not necessarily all day, but 12 to 15 hours a day. That's, there's some limit on that. It's the same as it was before.
Okay, I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you very much.
Okay, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Myatt did hit on a lot of my questions. One that goes back to even what Councilor Grace was saying, the accessible wheelchair to the beach. I was the first one who brought this to council 7 years ago about this, but I do believe the proponents had this as part of their plan when they were going to be right up against the lake. I think asking them now to be having to provide this where their new situation is, you'll be crossing a parking lot with the wheelchair, which is not reasonable. I think the accessible wheelchairs should be stored in our beach house in the garage where the life-saving equipment is all stored, because there's space in there for that. And its accessibility is easier. You don't want to be crossing a busy parking lot with these wheelchairs. My one question is about the term banquet hall. So we're saying there's no banquet hall, correct, Jay?
Yes, the proponents advise there's no banquet hall. He's not intending to market it as a space that's as a banquet hall.
Okay,
from what
but
I
they
understand.
will be renting the market space for weddings or other events, correct?
Yeah, there's certainly, I don't see it be, much like the Walker House. They certainly make space available in their building for lots of bookings. Similar,
That's
I
not a
think.
banquet hall.
I don't characterize it as that. Maybe I have a
Right?
different image. I'm also not the same person that spoke to you a couple of years ago. So what was explained then may be different. May have been different. I don't want to cop out on that one, but it feels like I am not
You're
well
right.
equipped to remember what was discussed that long ago.
Yeah, so it is known that the proponents, the CCV, will be using the space for weddings or other events that are there, and that is in the lease agreement. That is part of what they're doing, correct?
Yeah, and just in having this conversation, I'd like the proponent to outline and articulate explicitly their response to that particular comment. So I've made a note of it, and unfortunately I can't give you a different answer. It's just our discussions with the proponent have been that he's not having a banquet hall, but yes, there will be activities and bookings that will support the wedding periodically. So I want
So as long as it's known that when people say, "Oh, I thought you said there wasn't going to be a banquet hall, but now they're having a wedding there or hosting something," it's semantics in the word. It's just that it's known that there will be events held at the CCV, correct?
And yes, and we will have the proponent articulate specifically what they intend by that.
I'm sure they already have, but we'll get that redone. Another question I have is, originally, all parking was the prerogative of the town, looking after the parking because it is the beach. We haven't decided what we're doing with the parking. Our director, Amanda, has said at one point we had 172 spaces, and I think it's very, very important that we maintain those 172 spaces. So when we go to look at this, why are we now putting some of the burden of parking onto the proponents?
Well, it's just a contribution, and yeah, I guess why we're putting a burden on them as well. There's certainly the way it's changed has affected our ability to design the adjoining lands. So, and it's not just parking as outlined, it's landscaping, which was a component for them to look at. It was connectivity in the waterfront environment, which was a component for them. That'll now be on us. We're equipped to be able to design and consult and design and construct that better. And we just need the resources to be able to do that.
Okay. One thing I'd like to suggest is that we don't put a lot of grass in this area, because the Canadian cobra chickens will be migrating south from the harbor area, and we do not want them in the beach area. So minimal grass, but we do need some plant around there. I'd like to see the parking on Harbor Street remain angled with some type of barrier, then a little bit of vegetation, and then a drive-through and parking next to the CCV. That way our handicap issues can be taken care of. People with special needs will be able to easily get in and out of their vehicles to the building. And I do like the design. I think it's great. I know that the group has put a lot of work into this. They did take a lot of public opinion into this. It's a scaled down version, but I do look forward to seeing how this comes out and modernizes the beach in Port Elgin. So I will be supporting this motion tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions from members before we take any comments that you might have? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. And through you, as we refer to the potential amendments that are referenced under the operation of the project, there is a deletion of the elements related to for banquet hall located on project lands, and it refers specifically to hours of operation and in particular special event permit. So in light of the Deputy Mayor's comments related to events being hosted, are we looking to see an updated language there in terms of the number of, I think there was up to twice per week, or additionally with respect to any special event permit? Will that language be updated?
Well, the original proposal was to delete it, but I'm getting the sense just from the discomfort expressed that perhaps we should work to revise the language so it works for both parties rather than simply delete it and rely on other bylaws to regulate it. Let's be specific, and if we can come up with better wording, we'll provide it for your consideration.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, and I do have a couple other comments. So the Deputy Mayor also spoke about the efforts that were made in conjunction with community groups regarding the design. I was curious, the materials that are suggested, there was some great detail provided by the architect in terms of aesthetic and how they came to the conclusions that they did. Were there any considerations that you're aware of, Jay, by way of hardiness for a 12-month-a-year operation? Is that factored into the material consideration?
Yes, yeah, and I think that's why they concluded, now the architect's not with us, but I think that's why they concluded with the materials recommendation of pre-finished wood and metal sidings. They're longer lasting, built and generally designed so they last the life of the building rather than needing more regular maintenance and upkeep, which is more expensive. So they look as much as they can and use the color palettes as outlined in the brief, but also supportive of the Great Lakes waterfront environment, taking colors that are indicative of our brand, sort of a sandy whites and some splashes of brighter colors, and that's applied, and it evokes that rather than a actual wood, which has a shorter lifespan. They use a wood prefabricated sort of, I don't want to use wrong words here, pre-finished wood rather, so.
Okay, I do believe I honed in on the term prefabricated on a couple of occasions throughout the report, and it just sparked memories of our conversation with Lamont Sports Park regarding washroom facilities and the abundance of supply chain issues that exist in the world today. So I'm going to pair my last two questions together. The first of which is, were any considerations given with the materials chosen to those supply chain issues that may exist? And then simultaneously, there's a no later than date listed, and at what do we have at our disposal in terms of guarantees to or ways to recoup losses that may exist if the no later than date is not able to be met?
So the first one on the materials supply chain, there are certainly discussions that have gone on about that. I'm not privy to sort of what's been concluded, but we will respond if that's an issue early, and we expect in any arrangement agreement to have ongoing communication throughout the project. So if something like a supply chain concern comes up and it would affect the finish date, we expect to have that conversation as soon as it's known, so we can inform council and talk about how to resolve it. And so, I mean, to me, it's implicit in all agreements. We all act reasonably. It's understood supply chain issues affect many aspects of our lives nowadays. And would it be reasonable to ignore supply chain issues? No. So I think the reasonable thing is to examine it early, as soon as we know it, report to council. So if it comes up, we can respond to how to address that.
And thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, just to address the last component in terms of the no later than date and any recourse that we may have with this agreement.
Well, that's what the securities are for. So securities are, there's two purposes mainly to meet. One is it's sufficient amount for them to be, they want to do the work so they can get the money back. But secondly, we can use that securities and to go in and bring the land back to a standard that's acceptable to us, whether that's a demolition or whether that's completion. But I suppose if there's maybe not a no later land date, but a never date that they can't address, we'll have to report back to council and seek input and instruction on how council would like us to proceed.
Okay. Further questions from members, the Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jay, through you to Jay. Jay, I had an email today. Well, I've had a number of emails on this development, as we all have, no doubt. One of the questions, one of the emails was about our zoning bylaw that prohibits rooftop patios if adjacent to a residential area, or residents, I should say. Could you explain what that means, that clause about no rooftop patios?
Yeah, so our outdoor patio provisions in our zoning bylaw allow businesses to have patios. They allow them at the ground floor or on upper floors. If they were to have them on the ground floor, there are certain restrictions. If they're having them on upper floors, they will have certain restrictions. The specific restriction in our bylaw, as it reads, is that no outdoor patio is allowed above the first floor if it's adjoining a lot adjoining a residential zone. Well, in this case, it's adjoining a road that's zoned the same as this. It's zoned open space 1. The closest residential zones are on the north side of Elgin or the east side of Harbor, which are not adjoining lands. They have a roadway in between.
Yeah, thank you. That is a question for you, or say I'm not sure, but looking at the mapping here, the development, that portion of the development south of Mill Street, in the original RFP, was that always part of the RFP space? And secondly, when you see the 8 stalls I see there, that almost looks like 4 or 8 different businesses. Is that space with a cover? Is it for like a market? Is it for what are the buildings showing at the south end of Mill Street? And so there's 2 questions there.
So the first part, I mean, when it's been discussed, the south end is Mill, when the original proposal was put in, I don't know, I apologize, I haven't got the RFP that was sent out right handily available now, but the proposal that came in from the proponent showed my outdoor market space at that south end. And when it was put onto the map, it was in an area that may have extended south of Mill Street in a similar way that this extends past this, what would be the Mill Street extension, say. What's shown now is an indoor structure, as I'm trying to get the rendering that best shows that. Then maybe that's that page 5, second drawing again, that shows it best, because this is the same drawing as the upper floor is the outdoor dining of the space, and the ground floor is mercantile space, as I think it's noted there, and they could be space for businesses to enter into a lease with the proponent to sell sunglasses or whatever, and it could be located there. And now, of course, I can't get the drawing myself, but yeah, there it is. That is that space on the interior of those, and the lines that are shown on the drawing, I think, are just indicative of, I think it's the support beams that might be shown across the span of the building, and the space below could be demised and separated in any sort of combination.
Okay. Coming down one of the sketches, I'm not sure what pages, but coming down Mill Street, it appears to me that there's about a 25-foot walkway coming down Mill Street that you'll actually walk right through the development underneath the Whitefish Grill. There's a connecting link from Whitefish Grill to the rooftop patio, and there's a walkway right underneath. Jay, how wide is that walkway coming down Mill Street? And is there a view of the lake coming down Mill Street as you walk through that walkway underneath the connecting the upper floor that connects the Whitefish Grill and the rooftop patio? Is there how wide is that approximately?
Yeah, I don't have the scale, but if you permit me a minute, I will get my scale. It is approximately 7 meters for the walkway. And then, yes, there's a view And one of the renderings shows a pretty good angle of the entrance. Sorry, the dogs are barking. Pause for a minute.
Carry on.
The dogs will be more interesting than me, but there is a view as a pedestrian walking along that walkway through the open space. It would be walking into the pavilion areas, so there'll be other things that'll be going on, but it will lead to the view and sunsets that are, I think, being aimed at here.
So coming down Mill Street, as you enter into that 25-foot wide walkway, there is a view right through to the lake at that spot. That's what you just said, correct?
Yeah. No,
okay.
it was
Thank
a
you
statement.
for that. And one of the comments that Councillor Smith mentioned, and it's a good point about materials, and I like to I make comment. I think it'd be a good thing. The prefabricated manufactured wood, the board and batten, horizontal, vertical. I think in keeping with the this is Cottage area down there, and I would applaud them if that happens. I think that the the prefabricated manufactured wood. I don't see any brick in this development. I see all wood materials, and you mentioned some steel, but I hope that I would hope that would happen. The board and batten and manufactured wood. I think that would be a good thing to do. I just wondering about later on in the process when we take a look at our parking area to the west of CCV and that whole parking area. Would that be a good time for staff to think about, maybe this is Amanda or you, Jay, I'm not sure, about a transportation study for that parking lot area? Is that something that staff have thought about?
Yeah, no, we've certainly thought about, I'll defer to Amanda about the detailed, because this is a project that will take some time, but in fact, I'll defer to Amanda now because she's.
Sure, we have, through Mr. Mayor, we have the transportation or the traffic impact analysis recommendations from the transportation master plan that we can put in, and it's probably a better design to do it with every service that's down there. So looking at what the town wants to have there, the harbor as a destination, the beach as a destination, plus the CCV, to get a total view of what the traffic is going to be. And then we would look at those intersections and see if there's any intersection improvements to go along with that.
Amanda, while you're on, or Jay, but Amanda, while you're here, I just, from an active, we haven't talked a lot about active transportation tonight and bicycle racks and the connecting link between North Shore Park, North Shore Road, your wonderful trail system. We've invested heavily through North Shore Park into about the harbor office where you have to dismount. You dismount and walk your bike pretty much all the way to Izzard Street. And I'm wondering, Amanda, if this would be a really, really good opportunity. I see some space along Harbor Street, between Harbor Street and the development. There seems to be a fair amount of space there. Is there an opportunity? I think this might be a good opportunity you can comment on for active transportation to connect our trail system from North Shore Park all the way down to Izzard Road once and for all, because it's difficult for cyclists. They're on their bikes through North Shore Park and they get to the harbor office and to dismount. How do we make that as a connecting link? Have you thought about that at all? Or has the proponent or the town in our future plan, are we leaving space for that kind of service?
Jay, do you want me to do that one? Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. This is where we're envisioning that public process for the entire parking and beachfront area from Elgin Street down to Izzard. So there's absolutely opportunities to do that. I personally ride my bike down there quite a bit, but there's a nice opportunity to connect from the harbor office up Izzard to reconnect over to the Shipley Trail through that system, and we can bring through the public comments and how we could do that. With the CCV having the open space on all sides, east and west, we have that flexibility to put it where it suits best to accommodate this as a destination plus as a bicycle flow through area.
All right. And thanks for that comment about public input on the trail connecting link and both the parking area to the west of CCV. I think that would be a good thing to have community consultation in that regard, because those are two very, very important items. Obviously, the access for loading and unloading and getting into these buildings, Whitefish Grill and other spots. Where where's the loading and unloading for these buildings?
Well, that's also to be part of our discussion, because the way the project has gone, the lands that are in proximity to the project would have multiple uses, and trying to figure out how vehicular, pedestrian, bicycles, service vehicles, how they operate, and make sure there's limited conflict required more discussion, and the town is in a good position to do that. So as it is, there's no specific lane that serves all of these buildings. It will have to be subject to the discussion and work of the town as we advance that through the next little while.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those are my questions. I have comments like Councillor Grace does, but I'll leave it for now.
Sure. I see the deputy mayor has an additional question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just to piggyback on what the Vice Deputy Mayor said, and talking with the proponents, one of the plans that they do have is they would like to continue the boardwalk from where it ends at Harbor Street, past their buildings, going closer to Isser Drive. Now, the Bike Friendly Committee is also looking at active transportation as well. That's one of our big things in moving forward. But I do know that the proponents themselves are looking at extending the boardwalk. Instead of going around the harbor, they're going to have it extend in front of their building as well. So that's just something that they've been putting forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are there further questions? Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, it took a while there. Looking at some of the renderings, and I guess this is through you to perhaps Jay or Amanda, looking at the renderings, I'm seeing the trees being used as a buffer to Harbor Street, and that's fine. Has the proponent agreed, or have we asked that those trees be planted, be mature trees? There's no point putting in saplings or anything else. Has that been talked about, Jay?
Well, we've had several conversations on how to landscape this. It's sort of why we've concluded that, well, we need to do it as a more comprehensive review of the adjoining land. So what's shown on these plans is just illustrative of what's possible. I mean, even the parking area, play areas as are depicted south of the project are just illustrating something other than just white space or sand space, because there will be something there. They're not meant to convey any sort of confirmation that that's the design. Same goes for that hedgerow. We have had conversations specifically about the species that need to be there, have to be salt tolerant. Because they're close to a road, they have to be wind tolerant because of what goes on in Port Elgin and Saugeen shores. But we also need to make sure they're species that do the job too. So if it's screening we want, they have to be of a size, maturity, and species that screens whatever it is you're trying to screen. If they're meant to evoke sort of the quality of the beach environment or the waterfront environment, well, they need to be the types of species that would survive and be complementary to those features as well. So that might be some mix of grasses, apologies to those that are concerned about the grasses, but it might include that. Might be certain types of hardscaping or public art or beach driftwood or stonework. We don't know. I mean, that's sort of why I'm excited a little bit to see how the summer unfolds as the consultation unfolds about how the landscaping and the interaction of the landscaping with the street and the project can be complementary.
Okay, so then as I understand it, there's still plenty of talk that's going to go on as to size of landscape trees, size of trees, and so on throughout the entire development.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions? I just had a couple. I just wanted to clarify, Jay, there's been some questions obviously come in, or some concern, I suppose, come in from members of the public about the height of the structure, and I just wanted to verify that height restriction, that 10-meter height restriction, that is the height restriction that's contained in the bylaw, correct? We're not changing the bylaw. We are complying with the zoning bylaw at that 10-meter height. Is that correct?
Correct.
And
yes.
Has that, I mean, 10 meters and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but 10 meters is a pretty standard height in our zoning bylaw in terms of the height restriction in most parts of the community. Is that correct?
Well, if I've been permitted, the lowest density zone, the R1 zone, permits a dwelling height of 10 meters, same height. We don't have a lot of variability, and permit me to extend a little further. Apart from our highway corridor in Port Elgin, the next provision that we have is the R4 zone, which is a high density housing, and it's only 12 meters. So we don't have a lot of variability in the heights across the zoning bylaw.
So the height that's proposed here is the same as essentially as the height that's permitted in all the residential zones around this area and across the municipality. So there's several houses across the municipality who would be around this height, correct?
Yes, I off the top of my head which locations, but there are probably more than a handful.
Right, and that's been the case. This 10-meter height restriction on the main beach in this zone, we haven't changed that. You've been around 16 years or so, Jay? Has that height restriction changed on the main beach in that time?
With one, notable exception, no. The notable exception is on the north side of Elgin and the condos. That was a very specific height change. I think the maximum height is 50 feet. What's that in meters? I can't think of it now.
Anyway, so it's a long-standing thing. It's been the height of a structure permitted on the main beach in Port Elgin has been 10 meters for at least as long as you and I have been around this table, and probably much longer than that. So that's one point I wanted to clarify. And the other one, I received an email today with some questions about the lighting of the facility, and lighting is yet to be formally hammered out. But I wonder if you could just delve a little bit, Jay, into how lighting will be handled in those discussions, what bylaws we have in place, what expectations we have of the developers we enter into those discussions about the final lighting plan for the CCV.
Well, there's a few components, and the overarching primary one is that it's dark sky. Our guide outlines we would prefer and require dark sky compliant lighting. Well, what does that mean? It's got to be no more than is sufficient to provide its function. It's got to be shielded so that the light is directed downward, away from the sky, in other words. Our guide also requires that light can't be spilling onto a neighbor's property. We certainly, I think even in our site works and servicing agreement, we've even outlined that they have to be directed away or not on adjoining roadways or properties. And so one thing that is missing right now is a photometric plan, and that's a plan outlining the luminescence, or in other words, how bright the light is from the features, the source features, either on the building or on poles, and how bright they are at progressive distance from those features. And so that photometric plan done by a competent person will show, if it's done well, that the light at the roadway or the road edge is no more than our street lights, or it blends in and then therefore is compliant. We haven't seen that. Same with the signage. Many of the signs, at least that are shown on these renderings, have the so-called gooseneck lighting on them. That will have to be done in compliance with our sign bylaw, and it doesn't allow certain types of lighting, but likewise, it requires any lighting that is provided that it is directed toward the sign and not just in any direction.
So just to be clear, the photometric plan that you referenced there will be required by staff before signing off on the lighting as requested.
As we recommend, yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay, so those are the couple of questions that I had. So we can take comments from members, and then we'll move through to a decision on the recommendation. Are there anybody wish to make comments? Councilor Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In December of 2019, I voted to approve the lease for this development. I support a development on the Port Elgin Main Beach, which offers year-round amenities, a classic lakeside restaurant, a covered splash pad and skating rink, a year-round marketplace, a pavilion, a store for harbor users, and more public restrooms. I understand that to ensure the financial feasibility of the investment, other commercial tenants may be necessary. And in assessing whether to approve the plan and design before us tonight, I have thought back to my own visits to other waterfront communities that had developments with charm and character, some even two-story, housing unique shops and cafes that provided activities in inclement weather or shoulder seasons. I believe that such developments can be a valuable asset for communities. Residents have expressed concerns about the impact on the environment. The development has been moved significantly back from the dynamic beach. The Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority has confirmed that an environmental impact study was not required, provided that appropriate sediment and erosion control is undertaken to protect fish habitat. This requirement is included in the site plan agreement before us tonight, specifically in clause 16. Furthermore, as the town advances the work on its adjacent lands, it will require appropriate erosion and sediment control there to ensure stormwater quality and protection of fish habitat. Another environmental protection clause in the agreement requires that the lessee install temporary fencing or otherwise protect all tree shrubs and other vegetation to be retained. That's in clause 17. The proposed site is not a pristine, undisturbed area. This location was the site of train tracks, pavement, a former mini golf course, and a sand parking lot, which has been subject to motorized vehicle use for decades. Particularly regarding the parking area, I have asked staff to use the most environmentally sustainable materials and methods possible. And as you've heard tonight in our last meeting on this issue, the town will be conducting broad public consultation in its parking area design. One of the town's responsibilities, as outlined in the lease, is to, quote, ensure that the project supports the overall character of the project. I guess the design. In my opinion, the design of the project as presented in these plans is not consistent with the coastal character and vision that I believe most residents want for Saugeen Shores. Since I was first elected to council, I have consistently argued that our municipality must strive to preserve our lakeside character and charm. I successfully advocated for a cottage area street study to be included in the 2022 budget so we can best determine how to retain the character of our cottage areas while making necessary infrastructure improvements. I believe we can have growth and development without sacrificing what makes Saugeen Shores a special and beloved destination, either for tourists or for those who want to make our town their forever home. I participated in the design focus group organized by the proponent, and I had hoped that the vision presented by some participants, including me, would be different from what we see in tonight's plans. The architectural brief included in this report argues that coastal visions throughout North America are varied and that it's difficult to define what coastal vision means. Yes, there are industrial flavored developments that may work in certain North American coastal areas. In my opinion, that vision doesn't work for Saugeen Shores. I also have concerns about the references to, quote, Carney Lane retail outlets, end quote, and the carnival reference in the architectural brief. The architectural brief indicates that the vision presented by community representatives group, the community representatives group, would ideally, and I quote, express the freedom and hedonistic temptations of the carnival, as well as the stability and organizational structure of the seaside neo-Georgian architecture, end quote. Despite some survey respondents' fond references to Port Elgin's bygone beach carnivals, and I remember from being a little girl that I had a treasured little prize that I won at that one night, I believe that the majority of residents do not want a carnival beachside atmosphere like the references in the report to the Santa Monica Pier and locations in Florida, Grand Bend, or Sauble Beach. Some residents have argued that the proposed development will unfairly obstruct the view of adjacent property owners. I believe that if this development was appealed to the province based on obstruction of private homeowners' views, that appeal would not be successful. This is public land, and private homeowners do not own the view, regardless of how their own view may be negatively affected. However, I believe the municipality has a duty to preserve a public vista that is as attractive as possible. And in my opinion, this design doesn't fulfill that duty from either the west or the east. I recognize and greatly appreciate the commitment of the investors of the corporation, which represents the lessees in the proposed lease, in investing in our community in the face of many obstacles you've faced in the last couple of years. I also applaud the hard work of our staff in these negotiations at this time. The opportunity of our municipality to partner with a private entity to advance municipal goals is a worthy one. My ideal outcome here would be to ask the lessees to submit a different design which reflects the coastal vision I've heard residents ask for since the inception of this project. If I was to give you a vision, which I've mentioned myself a number of times since the fall of 2019, I would suggest a design similar to the Cobble Beach Golf development north of Owen Sound, with Nantucket-style design elements of cedar shake, gable windows, and soft colors. Yes, that's my personal preference, but I also believe it reflects the preferences of many residents. This is a legacy project for the ages, and I believe we must get this design right. That said, I can't vote in favor of tonight's recommendation because to do so would indicate that I approve of the design presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further comments from members? No? Vice Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a great, that was well prepared, Councillor Grace, and I had a fair number of comments similar to yours, but was not the end result. I will be supporting this recommendation this evening. I remember back, you know, when we and this is a much bigger scale, much more life-changing example, but North Shore Park started with 200 or 300 people signing a petition. People jumped onto the petition and ended up with 2,000 people didn't support it. They're going to clear the forest, and it was going to be a horrible thing for this town. And look at today, and you know, we didn't cut down the forest. We removed 4 trees and replaced with 12. And I think that project ended up pretty well, pretty good. This is, and I know these are two totally. I mean, they're very much different. There's no question about that. But you know, I've listened to people over the years too about the need for a restaurant facility down at our Port Elgin waterfront, and basically cleaning up our waterfront, the eyesore down there. I've listened to people about connecting trail linkages, going through the entire development at our waterfront, hooking up to Mitchell Lane, coming right through the beach area. I've heard of people asking for a year-round facility for markets and shows and other events. You know, I take a look at 7,000 residents, householders in this community. I took on this job. I swore to represent 7,000 householders, and that's what I'm doing. I'm trying my best to make informed decisions to represent the opinions of 7,000 householders. These people that oppose Cedar Crescent Village, those opinions are extremely important. There's absolutely no question about that. Extremely important. This has divided our community. And that's hurtful. It's going to take a lot of time to mend this. But, you know, my hand either goes up, it goes down. I actually reached out to the architect today because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about the architecture and the design, and he spent a considerable amount of time with me explaining about the board and batten, about the siding that's gonna mix in with the cottage country down there to create the coastal theme, the coastal look, the coastal feel. It's subjective. It's beholder of the eye. These sketches are very small, but you have to really take a deep dive into what the developer is looking at developing down here. I've heard on my 7 years on council, the need to make significant improvements down at our waterfront. I empathize with those residents down there who are losing views. I've lost sleep over this. Not that that matters to some people in the community, but I have. This has been a gut-wrenching decision. I've reached out to not only the people down, I mean, I've received lots of emails, phone calls, lots of people in the immediate area down on Harbor Street and Cottage Country, but other areas of the community as well that have said to me, build it, get going, get started. I know this one hurts in our community, that the 30 feet, the 2-story, the blocking of the, you know, the view of Lake Huron coming down Mill Street. I had an email from a person the other night said, Green Street, you're blocking the view of Green Street. And I had a good chat, and I said, no, not going to be any views blocked of Green Street. Mill Street, I drove over there again today, looked at what kind of, you know, view is going to be blocked, and it should come down the hill further and further down. Absolutely, it's 30 feet high. There's 2 stories, and I know the people who oppose want the 1-story building. But I'm hearing from these developers that are investing, what, 10 million, 12, 15 million, I don't know what the dollar amount is, a lot of money. They're saying that a Whitefish Grill restaurant that needs to be connected to a rooftop patio to help pay the bills. This is life-changing. I have to live with this for the rest of my time here in Saugeen Shores. I haven't taken this decision lightly. It's been gut-wrenching. I believe for the 7,000 residents in this community, I believe I've done all my research, and I believe I am making an informed decision by supporting this. I believe that once this is built, we're going to have a pretty successful development down on our waterfront. I know those people that oppose this are going to listen to what I just said, and I'm going to be chastised in tomorrow on all forms of social media. I won't be a hero here tonight, believe me. But I really believe it's the right thing to do for our community, and I'm going to support it and let the chips fall where they fall. If I run again in this year's election, I'm voted out over this, I've made an informed decision, and I have to live with that. So that's my stance, Mr. Mayor, and this has not been an easy decision for me, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions, or pardon me, comments? Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I come into this as a rookie. I've only been on council for 2 months, and it's a huge undertaking. But I was put here because people had confidence in the fact that I would make a decision based on what I feel is common sense. And I have a comment to make on that. First of all, I want to thank everyone who wrote in, generally to all of council, and specifically to council members, to express their opinions. I also want to thank everyone who took the time to express their opinions verbally. Not everybody wrote. As a matter of fact, the positive comments tend to be verbal, and that's fine, be it as it may. But I haven't seen a controversial subject like this since the Walmart announcement to open a store in Port Elgin. At the time, some people thought it would be the end of Port Elgin as we know it, and it wasn't. I feel the same about the Cedar Crescent Village issue at the main beach. People say it will ruin the beach. The beach proper is as active or passive as you want it, and it will remain that way after this development. You don't ignore the development if you wish and you just want to go to the beach. People do come to the beach to relax, get some rays, and of course go swimming. Kids love it. But it's been my experience that after a certain amount of time, the visit gets boring and families need to do something, particularly with the kids. And CCV will help attempt to fill that bill. It does block the line of the sight of the beach and sunsets by some residents in the area. Thousands of residents and tourists make an effort to head to the beach over the course of the summer to view the sunsets every year. They drive down, they walk down, they take a chair, and everyone enjoys the moment. Nearby beach residents are invited to do the same thing with respect, cross the street and head to the beach and enjoy the 15 minutes of the sunsets. I think we're headed in the right direction. I don't mind the design at all. It will certainly spruce up that area of the beach, if you want to call it that, but not affect the beach proper. And for that reason, Mr. Mayor, I'm supporting this project tonight.
Okay, thank you. Are there further comments from members? Don't see any. I'll just, I guess maybe I'll just conclude the discussion then this evening. I do want to reiterate what Councilor Davinsky said and say thank you to everybody who has written in the last little while. I've received a lot of emails. I've tried to respond to as many of them as I could, and unfortunately I ran out of time this afternoon, so there's some who I wasn't able to respond to before tonight's meeting, and I'm sorry for that. I appreciate those comments, whether they're critical or supportive. I do receive both, but I appreciate them all, and I know Council does as well. I do. I hear what Councilor Grace is saying about the design, and certainly, as always, her comments are well taken and always well thought through. I don't, with great respect to her, agree with not that I don't agree with the aesthetic or her personal aesthetic or indeed what she's expressing about what the community's aesthetic may be. I guess what I look at is how to make a decision when it comes down to a thing like what the aesthetic of a facility ought to be. How do you decide? Because in the end, as the Vice Deputy Mayor said, it is a matter of taste to an extent. But when it's a public project, it's also a matter of planning and a matter of consultation and trying to understand what fits best. And we have had an extensive public consultation on this subject, all dating right back to the Waterfront Master Plan. We also have, we have the design concept for the main beach. We also have several design documents pertaining to the town as a whole. What should the town of Port Elgin's design aesthetic be? And then we've heard from the public, and I have to say, and I know I've heard from lots of people saying that there hasn't been public consultation in this process. I've been in this business for a few years now, and I have never been part of a process with more public input ever. Council's in possession of hundreds, if not more than 1,000 pieces of correspondence probably on this subject. And I know we've reviewed them all. And so we've had a chance to understand what the public's aesthetic is. And the proponent has too. And you can see an evolution. If you go back to 2019, when this first came to council, there was a presentation with a design, the aesthetic of which was quite different, starkly different from what we're looking at today. It was brick. It had, several different features that are not present anymore. Then it evolved into the sort of the middle design, if you like, of this project, which was different again, trying to respond to what folks were saying about what the look and feel and aesthetic of the facility ought to be. And now we're into sort of the third major iteration of this, again, altered in its aesthetic to try to incorporate what the people have been telling them. And what we have in our possession is this design brief from an architect who has, whatever you may think of the end result, has clearly thought through in great detail and worked hard and examined the situation carefully to arrive at where he's arrived at, and has a good justification for it, right? In terms of the shape of the facility, the materials used, all of these things, justifications for all of them. And so for me, I look at all of that and where the architect arrived at, and I say there's a good justification for it. It's based on some sound principles. It's based on what we've heard from the public, and it's clearly evolved over time to try to follow the public process as it's evolved for the last 2 years to get to this place. I don't think I could get it to a better place, and I'm not sure that a delay or sending it back would, I'm sure it might come back with something different, but I'm not sure it would be, it might be more acceptable to my friend, Councillor Grace, and less acceptable to my friend, Councillor Smith, or another person, right? And so I don't know, that's where I end up. So I think I'm content with the design. I know it will satisfy some and not satisfy others. But I am confident it's being done for good reasons with strong justification. And I am absolutely convinced that it will be a beautiful facility on the main beach that will provide, in the end, the amenities that I have heard for so long people want to see at the main beach. And our town's busiest beach, the hub of beach activity in the town of Port Elgin, and a place where people want to congregate, want to have a restaurant, want to have a pavilion that they can hang out in, a place where they can stop by and get an inner tube for their kids to play with, or an ice cream cone. Lots of places to get ice cream cones there now, and more in the future, or whatever. And I think so. I think it's remains as exciting now as it was before, and I think it's going to look good, and I think it's going to be a positive addition to the main beach. So I remain really excited about it, and looking forward to advancing it, as I hope council will. So with that, we've had a good discussion this evening. I thank council for it, and I'll ask all in favor of the recommendation. And opposed? That's carried. Okay, so then we're on to, pardon me, the second item under general government, which is a staff report on the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative membership renewal. And sorry, who's got that one now? Does the CAO have that? Yes, the CAO.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just getting it in front of me. Sorry, just the agenda package is large tonight. This membership, Saugeen Shores has been a member of the Great Lakes Waterfront group for a number of years, and we have received the renewal for the 2022 year. The details of that has been attached. We thought it was important to bring this renewal forward to council for some discussion and some instruction as to whether or not you wanted to renew our membership in this fund or in this group. So the recommendation tonight is looking for council to direct staff regarding the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative membership renewal.
Thank you. I'll read the recommendation. It's recommended that council direct staff regarding the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative membership renewal. And I'll just, I made this time start the discussion. I requested that staff put this on the agenda for consideration. I really don't see the value in the town of Saugeen Shores in being a member of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. We're members of several organizations of municipalities that represent us at every level. And I just have not been able to understand the value delivered by the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative for the town of Saugeen Shores. So for that reason, I'll be voting against the recommendation. Other questions or other comments? I'll start with the Vice Deputy Mayor, and then I'll get Councillor Grace.
Mayor, I guess I had the same question. You can pay these $2,000-3,000 bills over 20 years and spend $60,000, and how much have how much have you gained over a 20-year period? And maybe there's some support around the table to continue on with it. But I've done a little bit of research on the value of what we received, and I don't get this one. And so I support you. I would. My recommendation this evening is to withdraw the membership.
Okay, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope that we retain our membership. I attended this year's virtual conference that's sponsored by the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, which is a joint group between the US and Canada. And because our lake is shared between the US and Canada, I think that this organization provides valuable resources of a shared to give us some additional information and support in our shared resource. One of the many resources that I learned about in the virtual conference that I attended were grant opportunities. And I think that if anything, we should become more involved in the leadership opportunities provided by this organization. The attached report card in the materials that were provided by the CAO outlines the billions of dollars that this organization helped to secure in Canada and the US for purposes such as the rehabilitation of stormwater systems, restoration of wetlands and shorelines, support for natural and hybrid infrastructure projects, the creation of a freshwater action plan to restore and protect large lakes and rivers, prevention of invasive species. All of these are programs which I think directly benefit our municipality. And maybe we haven't seen the value because I don't think that in my time on council, we've been very involved in this particular organization as attendees, as presenters, whatever. But I do support wholeheartedly renewing our membership. And if anything, I'd like our municipality or representatives from our municipality to become more involved in the leadership of the organization. Thanks.
Further comments? Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I went through the material as well, and I too have from time to time participated in the events that they host. And I came to the conclusion before I heard any comments tonight that this was an initiative that we should continue with. I think that at a time like this, when the Great Lakes are facing some of the greatest pressures in history, both through climate change, invasive species, the one that comes to mind, of course, I think from a fish point of view, we're keeping the invasive Asian carp at bay, but that's almost an inevitable invasive species that's going to get into our lakes, and all of the cities and municipalities and towns that border on the Great Lakes are going to be seeing increasing threats. And I think for a matter of $3,000 that they do a lot of good work. And like Councillor Grace said, you only get out of these things what you put into them. And maybe it is time that we look at becoming more involved in taking our issues forward. So I'm going to support this staying in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there further comments? I guess my only comment, and not to take too much issue with my colleagues, is that we're members of lots of organizations. The Great Lakes are managed by the federal government. There's the International Joint Commission. There's the province of Ontario. There's the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. There's the Rural Ontario Municipal Association. There's the Good Roads Association. Again, I ask how many memberships do we require, and how many levels of government need to look after the lakes? The Great Lakes are the responsibility ultimately of the federal government in joint partnership with the US federal government, managed through the International Joint Commission. We've also, and the province of Ontario certainly has its level of input, both of which organizations we're well connected with and members of. And then of course, all of our municipal associations, of which and then there's FCM, of course, which I'm also a member of. I just don't, there's such a thing, I think, as membership overload. At some point, you only need so many memberships. And at some point, you're only buying so much value for the taxpayer by being a member of more and more organizations. I would put to you those great initiatives that Councillor Grace listed, and they are great, would exist in some form or another with or without the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, because there's so many other people dreaming up programs like that. And they'll certainly continue to exist whether or not we're members of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. And we have a great staff who can find access to those programs. So I just have trouble seeing, again, it's a membership overload question. And perhaps if council does choose to continue this membership, we should talk about ways to try to get more value out of it, because I really think in return, whether it's a return for $1 or $300,000, we do need to get value for the taxpayer for every one of them. So, anyway, I just reread the recommendation actually, and it's only that council directs staff to, so we do need direction. So I'll ask council to offer some direction. I guess it's always best to have a resolution put in the affirmative rather than the negative. So I have heard 2 members suggest they would like to support renewing the membership. Perhaps they would make a motion to renew, and then we can decide what we want to do. That's moved by Councillor Grace and seconded by Councillor Mayette, that council does renew its membership in the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. Is there any further discussion? I don't see any, so I'll ask all in favor. And opposed? That's carried. Okay, so we'll move on then to, where am I now? 7.3, infrastructure and development. And staff report on site plan agreement for County of Bruce EMS 1243 Mckenzie Road and the Supervisor Development Services.
Thank you. Again, Mr. Mayor, this is report. Bruce County EMS is locating a depot at the property at 1243 Mckenzie Road, which is the library headquarters. The project would facilitate sort of the construction of a building that's primary purpose is to secure and store and otherwise service 9 ambulances at this location. We've been working with the county for a little while. I think a year ago, there was some changes to the parking area. You might have seen they just informally regraded the area so they could park at the site. Well, here they're following through with the construction, Mr. Mayor, as you know. The one thing to note with this project, apart from what's in our standard site plan agreement, is that this is still subject to the review of the Committee of Adjustment scheduled for 1 week today. The driveway width, that's the main driveway to the 3 service bays, is not compliant with our zoning bylaw. And so the agreement just has a clause that says it's subject and conditional upon the approval or consideration of that minor variance, and that if it's not approved, the agreement is null and void. But we've done this once before, recently with the West Dell project, that it was in the appeal period. A similar situation here. It hasn't got the approval yet, but we'd like to advance the agreement in a timely way with that clause. So I've had the report, you've read it. If there's any questions, I can help answer.
Sure, I'll read the recommendation, then we can take questions. It's recommended that council pass a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement with the County of Bruce County EMS, and that council authorize the director to approve subsequent site plans associated with the subject lands, provided the site plans are in general conformity with the overall site plan, are consistent with the town's development guide, and compliant with the town's zoning bylaw. Questions or comments? Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for Jay, just to clarify, because this topic or this question came up when the Accessibility Committee was reviewing this plan. And I know you explained it for me. I wondered if you would explain it for the public. On the site plan, there is a play structure identified near the loading and unloading dock on the left side of the diagram. Could you clarify what's happening with that, please?
Yeah, so itself is an artifact of the drawing. There is another drawing in the approved submission where it says play area to be removed, and it's, for whatever reason, that is not included here. What it is a play structure that the adjacent landowner had erected on this property with or without the county's permission at the time. County's been working with the landowner to have it removed, and it'll just be removed when it's time to remove it.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Councilor Maya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say it's a wonderful looking development, and it'll only add to the area with the police station right across the road. It'll be a hub of emergency services and probably foster a closer working relationship between those 2 agencies. And I think it's a great location, and I look forward to it being built.
Thank you. Further questions? I will just note for council's information. Oh, sorry, Councilor Davinsky, you go ahead. Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question may not be relevant, but let me ask it. This is close by to the planned Rogers cell tower. And I know we are negotiating to get them to move, and I haven't heard anything on that. But would that tower affect the communication of the ambulance headquarters if it locates there?
I think specifically, I don't have any knowledge about how communications towers work or interfere with, certainly, I think there's enough of them in the area. We'd want to make sure they aren't. So I can certainly follow up with that, but I think it's a low risk in this case that it actually has an impact. The county would have been circulated the cell tower proposal because they're a landowner within the circulation area. So I'll follow up with the county staff about that.
Thank you, Jay. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I should have emailed you earlier today. And I, like Dave Mayette, I think this is a terrific building and will really add to the area and keeps our emergency services, if you will, close together. I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Anything else from anyone? I just wanted to note for council's information that's been, of course, this has been discussed several times at Bruce County Council, and the direction now is that not only will this be a new EMS station for the town of Saugeen Shores, it will also become the headquarters of Bruce County EMS. So it's really, I think, a really positive development for the town of Saugeen Shores to have the senior leadership of Bruce County EMS will now be located in Saugeen Shores, and obviously employment benefits to that, but also making us a bit of a hub of that service in the region. So a very positive, as everyone has said, very positive development and badly needed because we're obviously, as we grow, need enhanced emergency medical services. And this gives us the room to grow and the ability to provide those services at the same high quality standard that we always have. So you've heard the recommendation then, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, now we're on to 7.5 protective services and a staff report on the County Emergency Social Services Memorandum of Understanding. And I saw the clerk come on, so maybe the clerk has this report, does she?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the chief's absence, I will present the report. So this report presents a draft memorandum of understanding with the County of Bruce for the provision of emergency social services during a major emergency. The county has entered into an agreement with the Canadian Red Cross Society for the provision of these social services. And this MOU allows the town to work cooperatively with the county and the Red Cross. It establishes the terms and the responsibilities for the operation of a reception or evacuation center, as well as the delivery of other emergency social services during a major emergency.
Okay, thank you. I have a recommendation, then we can take questions. It's recommended the council pass a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a memorandum of understanding between the town of Saugeen Shores and the county of Bruce for the provision of emergency services. Questions or comments from members? I don't see any, so all in favor? That's carried. All right, then we're on to 7.7, petitions and communications for information. 6 items there. Any comments? Questions about any of those items? I don't see any. Oh, Councillor Davinsky. Yep, Councillor Davinsky.
I'm sorry. I got to make sure I'm in the right area, and I am not. I apologize.
Yep, no worries. Okay, any questions on the petitions? Don't see any, so we'll move on then to Item 9, the reports of department heads, 3 reports. The first one is an information report on the Community Economic Development Initiative, and we have the Economic Development Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. In 2021, a joint application to the Community Economic Development Initiative known as SETI was submitted with partners at Saugeen First Nation. SETI is a 3-year funding program that aims to improve the economic prosperity of participating First Nations and adjacent municipalities through joint community economic development planning and initiatives. The next steps include the establishment of a joint staff and council working group with representation from both communities to start in February of this year. We are very much looking forward to participating in the SETI program stream as one of the only 8 chosen partnerships across the country. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an exciting report. Are there any questions or comments from members about it? I just want to say congratulations to you, Heather, and to staff. I know, and to the staff at the Saugeen First Nation for your success at this. And I'm looking forward to seeing this committee struck and to the partnership that it's going to enable us to forge with our friends at Saugeen First Nation. I think we have tremendous opportunities to work with them on tourism and other economic development initiatives, and this is a really great way to start that process. So thank you, I guess, and thank you so much for getting us involved in it and recognizing this opportunity and working with your colleagues at Saugeen First Nation on it, because it's a huge opportunity for the community. So thank you. And we will then move on to the second item, which is an information report on the 2021 major initiatives Q4 update, and the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it's been a long meeting already, but I hope you'll let me speak to the major initiatives of 2021, because there has been a number of successes. And when you complete a year, it's good to take a moment just to reflect on the number of successes and projects that we've had advanced here at the town of Saugeen Shores. So if you remember, in January 2021, SMT presented the major initiatives report as a way of highlighting for council and the public a number of the priorities of the municipality and what will be moving forward in the year. This year, for 2022, Saugeen Shores produced its first annual business plan, and it was presented as part of the annual budget in November. And it highlighted both the major initiatives as well as it went further to highlight a bunch of the division highlights that'll be moved forward in 2022. But speaking to 2021, we had 37 major initiatives that were advanced. And as of the end of the year, we were at about 84% completion of those major initiatives, with just a few of them moving into 2022. Attached in the report is an overview from each of the department heads, and also the detailed tables that highlight a lot of the details related to each project. But I just wanted to note a number of those highlights very quickly this evening, just to celebrate those successes. So we advanced the Lamont Sports Park Phase 1. And if you haven't seen those images, I'd be happy to share them. It's quite an impressive feat. I was able to walk out there up to my knees on the weekend, but have a look at what's going on along the rail trail. And it is pretty impressive. So I look forward to seeing that open in 2023. We completed the first information technology strategic plan for Saugeen Shores. And we also advanced the implementation of a new accounts payable software, which is really speeding up our processes and making it easier in order to pay our bills with our vendors. We completed the asset management plan for our core infrastructure, which is a pivotal piece of work to be completed. And for those that live at the south end of town, they will have noticed that we completed Phase 3 of the Bruce Road 25 redevelopment. We completed the development charges background study and moved that forward. And speaking on behalf of the Saugeen Shores Police Services, who also provides an update to council through this quarterly reporting, they completed a number of recruitments, training was specifically related to their canine unit, and they also highlighted a number of grant opportunities that they've applied to. Just to close out this piece for council and the public tonight, we in December reported on a number of successful physician recruitments in Saugeen Shores. We've seen the development of the Innovation Park employment lands at the south end of town on Concession 6, and we'll see those coming to life in 2022. We advanced the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation land claim, and we applied for a number of successful grants through the Municipal Modernization Fund, which are helping make differences to the way that we do our work here at Saugeen Shores. Lastly, but not least, we advanced a number of priorities related to attainable housing and supporting housing in Saugeen Shores. And we supported our business community through the impacts of COVID-19, which continue to this day. So again, it's been a very busy year for staff, but also a very successful year, all being accomplished in the backdrop with the COVID-19 pandemic, which has played a lot of challenges, both for the public in relationship to our facilities, but also how we implement our work here at the town of Saugeen Shores. So again, I know it's been a long night, but I just wanted to take a moment to highlight some of those successes and do a little bit of a shout out to our staff for all the hard work that's gone into the successes of 2021. And we look forward to bringing you further reports in 2022 as we continue to move forward here in Saugeen Shores. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Let me just pick up where you left off there and say thank you on behalf of council to all the staff of the town of Saugeen Shores for a successful year. I think whether it's working on one of these major initiatives or working on a routine initiative at the town, whether it's planting gardens or plowing snow or working at the pool or working in the arenas or painting lines on ball fields or you name it. We have some outstanding staff working for us day to day who work hard for us and work hard for the whole community, and it is noticed and it is recognized and it's appreciated. So thank you to you, Kara, for your leadership, our senior management for advancing these major initiatives, and the council's appreciative of a successful year in 2021 and looking forward to another successful year in 2022. Other questions or comments from members of council? Councilor Davinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Kara. Kara, I saw the building services numbers, which are spectacular. I was just wondering, can we put this out as a news release? I mean, besides what we're doing, there's a lot of negative out there, and this just shows that things are happening. Could we possibly have a news release put out on this?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. And yes, I forgot in my list and to recognize our building division, who continues every year, I think, to respond effectively to the increased growth that we see here in Saugeen Shores. And you're right, 2021 was quite the year for them, with, I believe, just over $150 million worth of permits that were completed here in Saugeen Shores. And I also thank you for the reminder that sometimes we're not the greatest at celebrating our own successes. And so I will take your point and I will advance communication out to the media on the successes that were brought forward tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. It's helpful to have a radio guy on council. Are there further questions or comments? I don't see any. So thank you very much for that report. It's much appreciated, Karen. And that moves on to the final report, which is an information report on the municipal election and key dates. Are there any questions about that? The clerk, that's the clerk's report. It's there for your information. Don't see any, so then we'll move on. That's the end of the agenda. And we'll do a quick round of statements by members and the deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'd just like to give a big shout out and thank you to Bruce Power and everybody who helped make our vaccination clinics last week such a success. They were filled to capacity, and I'm looking forward to the next date, so that if you haven't got your vaccinations yet, please try and get in and get your vaccination.
Thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have two items tonight. I'll try to be quick. The first is news from our Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee, and it's about an event that we are sponsoring. A majority of the 535 respondents to our public survey are concerned about climate change. So in order to raise awareness of the impacts of individuals and households upon climate change, our committee has partnered with Project Neutral, and we're also supported by the Nuclear Innovation Institute to provide a virtual carbon calculator experience. It's going to take place next Wednesday night, January 19th, from 7 to 8 p.m. We have a diverse group of panelists who are participating, including Huron-Bruce MP Ben Lobb and Bruce County Warden Janice Jackson, and the mayor and Councillor Smith. So we anticipate that we hope we'll have viewers from across all of Bruce and Grey counties and members of the public. We'll be publicizing this event, and all of my colleagues on council will receive an invitation to participate as well. So we hope that you'll join us. A link to the event will be provided in the publicity materials. My second item is that it is with great sadness that I pay tribute to Debbie Bell, a very valuable member of our community for many years, who passed away on January 8th. Debbie was a beloved teacher at Saugeen District secondary school, and involved in many volunteer activities in our town and the region. Debbie was a talented musician, a pianist and cellist and teacher who played in the Georgian Bay Symphony and volunteered her time to accompany local students as they competed in music festivals. I want to particularly recognize Debbie's vital role, along with her husband, Charlie, in the inspiration and leadership of the 26-year-old annual Canadian Big Band celebration. Those of us who volunteered and participated remember Debbie's extraordinary behind-the-scenes organization that made this event such a successful contributor to our town's culture and economy. And I extend my deep sympathy to Debbie's family and friends.
Certainly, and I'm sure that goes for all of council. Councilor Davinsky.
Indeed, it does, and nothing else, Your Mayor.
Thank you. Then we'll go to Councilor Carr.
And nothing for me here tonight, Mr. Mayor.
And Councilor Mayette.
Nothing but a sincere Happy New Year to everybody who's listening.
Yeah. Very good. Just one comment from me, not that I need to remind any of you, but a pretty difficult time out there at the moment with the COVID restrictions in place at the moment. People homeschooling their children now. I was been doing that myself for the last several days. Businesses that are locked down and at various stages of not being able to be open. It's a difficult time, and so I would just encourage everybody to, we've been doing this a long time, and I know people are not in a very good mood about it generally, and I certainly don't blame people for that. But we have to lift ourselves up, get out there, support one another in our community, and support our businesses in our community, and keep doing that because they need us to do that takeout and shop in those local stores and keep them afloat through this period of time until we can get back to a point where we're open and they can do things more normally. So certainly encourage all members of the community to be optimistic about the future, keep supporting each other, keep supporting the businesses, and we'll get through this and things will be brighter. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor? The Committee of the Whole stands adjourned. We'll reconvene the regular council in about 10 minutes, 8:45.
There, it's 8:44. If we can get all members to turn on their cameras. Mr. Mayor, we have all members present. You're currently muted, but you may begin.
Okay, thank you. Then we will call to order this regular council meeting. And the second item on the agenda is disclose of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you wish to declare. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime. We have no additions or deletions. We have no public meetings, so that moves us on to adoption of minutes. And I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of December 13, 2021, the planning minutes of December 20, 2021, and note and file the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of December 13, 2021 as presented. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mayette, seconded by Davinsky. Any questions or comments to any of those sets of minutes? Seeing none, then all in favor? That's carried. Now we're on then to item 6, report of the Committee of the Whole. And the first report is a Community Services, Parks and Recreation report regarding the Port Elgin market contribution. And I have a resolution that council waive the 2021 financial contribution for the operation of the Port Elgin Beach Market by the Port Elgin Pumpkin Fest Association. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Carr. Any questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Then we're on to item 7, report of municipal officers and committees. And we have 3 reports there. The first one is a staff report on land development process review request for proposals, and I have a resolution that council approve KPMG to carry out the land development process review in accordance with the terms of the request for proposal in the amount of $87,950 plus applicable HST, and that the director be authorized to sign the CEO/MEA standard agreement with the consultant. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the deputy mayor, second by Councillor Carr. Questions or comments to this resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Now we're on to the second report, which is a striking committee report about the 2022 council meeting schedule. And there's a resolution that the 2022 council meeting calendar be approved, recommending that the August 22nd, October 24th, and December 26th meetings be canceled, and further that an amendment to the procedural bylaw be presented at a future meeting to update the date for the inaugural session for November 15th. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Grace, seconded by Councillor Smith. Any questions or comments to this resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Then we're on to the third and final report, striking committee report on an appointment to the Community Economic Development Initiative. And there's a resolution that Mayor Charbonneau be appointed to the Community Economic Development Initiative and Deputy Mayor Matheson be appointed as the alternate member. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, seconded by Mayette. Any questions or comments to this resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. All right, that moves us then on to motions, notices of motions. And we do have one motion. It is to extend Councillor Schreider's leave. And there's the resolution is as follows: that the procedural rules be suspended to waive the notice of this motion to allow the matter to be voted on at the January 10th, 2022 council meeting. And whereas Councillor Schreider has requested her leave of absence be extended to January 31st, 2022, now therefore be it resolved that council grant Councillor Schreider an extension to her leave of absence until January 31st, 2022. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Smith, seconded by Grace. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, that moves us then on to bylaws. There are 5 bylaws there for your review. Does anyone wish to have any of them considered individually? No request for that. I'll read the resolution. It's resolved that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 10th day of January 2022. 1/1/2022 being a bylaw authorizing the borrowing of money to meet current expenditures of the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores. 2/2/2022 being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for the year 2022 to provide for the payment of taxes and to provide for penalty and interest. 3/3/2022 being a bylaw to impose a fee for a sewer connection charge and or water connecting charge for lands located on Bruce Road 25. 4/4/2022 being a bylaw to impose a fee for a sewer connection charge and or a water connection charge for lands located on McNabb Street. And 5/5/2022 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meetings of the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores. Is there a mover and seconder for the resolution? Matheson and Smith. Any questions or comments to this resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. And finally, we have a motion to adjourn, and I have a motion that this regular council meeting of January 10, 2022 hereby adjourns at 8:50 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Mayette and Smith. All in favor? That's carried. We stand adjourned. See you guys later.